And I think this is actually a
Thank
great
you.
lead-in to Ada's session, which is about all-in-one workflows, browser-based editors and the teams that are making that happen. Ada, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm just here to moderate the panel of the real experts here. Here they are. So we have Jonathan Hale, if they'd like to introduce themselves.
I'm the CEO and CTO of Wonderland Engine, a downloadable editor that produces a efficient WebAssembly-based runtime for WebXR applications.
And we have Stewart Smith.
Hi, I'm Stewart in Brooklyn, New York, working for Amazon, doing all things spatial computing.
Fantastic. And we have Will Eastcott.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Will Eastcott. I'm the creator of an application called Play Canvas. It's a platform for building interactive web content. So you can use it for building things like browser games, of course, AR and VR, and playable ads and all kinds of stuff like that.
Fantastic. Well, we only have 25 minutes, so let's get started. The first question I've got here, which I really want to dig into, is what sets apart all-in-one solutions from the normal web development workflow for anyone to take?
I don't mind having a stab at that. So there's lots of great technologies out there. If you're a web developer and you want to build some XR content, there's many open source frameworks and tools. There's like a whole host of stuff that you can take. But if you do that, what you're not getting is any form of like workflow. So while you have the flexibility to construct your own workflows, which is great, it gives you lots of freedom, it can take a lot of time, and a lot of these technologies don't necessarily work seamlessly together. So these all-in-one approaches, give you a more structured entry to development for building this kind of content. But I think like one thing I would say that's pretty important though is that it's not really a case of you have to choose one or the other. It's kind of a bit of a shade of gray, because even platforms like Play Canvas, which look like monolithic platforms, actually they're kind of broken into subtools, and the idea is that you can kind of take the parts that work best for the workflows you want to build. So yeah, but like certainly like a platform like Play Canvas and I'm assuming like Wonderland and some of these other solutions, they give you a much more kind of structured approach.
Do either of the other two have any answers you'd like to add to that?
I feel like Will did a pretty good job of summarizing.
Fantastic. All right, next question I've got is, so what benefits do you see from having XR technologies on the web?
Oh, I love the openness of it. Sorry, I just jumped right into it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, the web, to a certain extent, is not owned by any country or company. You can argue that there's vast influence and people pushing that influence around, but it's kind of the best thing we've got right now in terms of shared responsibility and shared creation. And to build XR on top of that means we're going to have all of that benefit, the benefit of that free foundation to build on. It's not a perfect utopia, I know that, but I'm still a big believer in the web. I feel like we've tapped a lot of its potential, but not all of its potential. And I'm really excited that we get to play with that and build new things and so on and so forth.
That's really cool. Jonathan or Will?
I feel like the web basically allows you to do everything that XR allows you to do, but easily published, easily accessible, and secure, running in a sandbox, which might be interesting to big companies, right? So it's super easily distributed. I could imagine one day if we walk around with AR glasses, if there's a restaurant somewhere, you won't install their app, but you will click on their QR code to have their interactive menu, right?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite points as well. Will, do you have any favorite features?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I'm a big fan of the accessibility of the web, not just for the content, but also for the tools. So, Play Canvas itself as a development platform just sits on a URL and you can just build straight in the browser. But in terms of the content, certainly I think it's probably more natural, like you described, Jonathan, that you walk around a 3D world in AR and you can just kind of like dynamically stream content, and the web works best as a medium for that. But just like more generally, like if you look at, say, VR content, so if you've got a Quest, you can either go to the store and you can download and install apps. If you want to view web-based content, WebXR content, then you do that through the Oculus browser. Now, kind of using a browser is the kind of paradigm we've become used to, where you kind of enter a URL and you load some content. But I think that's going to evolve very rapidly over the next few years, because right now, at the moment, Oculus have added like interesting content on the new tab, and you can kind of discover stuff that way. But there's going to be much more interesting and more natural ways to discover content, where you can just like seamlessly jump from one piece of content to another in a very sort of transient way. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how the whole kind of this whole kind of ecosystem of web content evolves over the next few years.
Fantastic. Now, not on like the now onto like the less exciting positive side. What are some of the pain points of working on WebXR you've encountered either through your users or for yourself as developers? And like, what have you kind of done to alleviate some of these issues for the users of your platforms?
Ooh, I'd say one as a developer is just the slowness of certain good ideas to mature and become widespread. Why can't we just link yet from one, totally immersive experience to another in the same way that we hyperlink, right?
I'm so sorry, that's our bad and
No,
thing. We're still working on it.
People pushing it forward. You're one of the heroes. You are not the villain in this story. It's so stuff like that where this is going to be so useful, and it's going to also just be exciting, not for just the consumers, but for developers to be able to say, I want to land at this coordinate, or I want to take someone visiting my site and land at this coordinate in your site. And then for your site to handle the whole, that space is actually restricted to logged in users, but we could land you over here, or, whatever the paradigm is. Wanted it for a few years.
so like really deep linking into your XR experience and proper parsing URL. I like that a lot, and that should be very doable.
Yeah.
Because it's just normal URL stuff the web's been doing already.
Absolutely.
Will or Jonathan, do you have any like pain points you've encountered or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. I mean, I'd say probably one of the main ones that I hear is problems around getting XR experiences to scale across like lots of different device types. So especially like, if you're building a VR experience, then, you want that to be able to scale from a high-end headset all the way down to maybe just a low-end mobile device. And, like I normally talk about this in terms of responsive VR. So, as like a company dealing in sort of web technologies, we sort of are always talking about responsive websites or web design. And the same principles kind of apply to building XR content. So to help our users solve these problems, we try to kind of like include lots of pre-built templates, scripts, prefabs, for want of a better word, that enable people to just like place viewpoints into their scene that automatically scale from like a VR viewpoint down to like, let's say, a mouse and keyboard controlled viewpoint, or maybe even a touch controlled viewpoint, so that setting all of that up in your application is completely trivial. And like it just like almost magically allows your application to scale across all of these devices.
So previously, before I went into Wonderland Engine, I co-founded a company called White-Rabbit, which did XR or WebXR agency work, and also launched Construct Arcade, the free VR browser games platform that also like is recommended by the Oculus browser, for example, on like a number of games. with maybe Barista Express might be a game that people know or something like that. And what we figured is like the three biggest problems were just generally performance. I think the web has this myth around it that it cannot do high-end web graphics, which I think a number of apps and also engines have disproven, but still the myth is still around there because, oh my God, we can only have 100 draw calls or something like that. I think that's generally not true. But Wonderland Engine, for example, of course, tries to optimize the hell out of that, so to make sure that the users can spend their time, the development time, on their actual application and not optimizing their content. And content is the next part, where 3D content is larger than just an image or something like that. Often you have 3D models with multiple textures on it, especially when you go for a PBR workflow. And all that content needs to be handled in a way that it downloads quickly anyway, right? And what is also a difference to like the web-based approach is that with our all-in-one workflow kind of approach, these applications can actually handle the optimization way long before the content reaches the client side. So we can like spend loads of time just optimizing content, crunching down those bits and stuff just to like make it download really, really quickly and just render it really, really fast. And the final thing is workflow. I think there's a lot of like native tools out there currently, and they have a certain workflow established that, like coming back from my days from like native computer graphics development, where it's way slower than the web. And WebXR is just amazing for this because people have this web expectation of they change a line of code and it immediately changes the result in the browser running on the other screen, right? And we try to, with Wonderland Engine, obviously also make sure that this workflow keeps, like this mindset stays alive with WebXR also.
Cool, thank you so much. Those were all amazing answers. And it's really good to hear all the stuff you were thinking about. What are some of the features you've heard developers asking for WebXR? Like, what do they really want to see in the platform?
For WebXR as the API?
Yeah, like, are any features where developers are just like, oh, we really want to work with WebXR, but we can't until it supports X feature?
I mean, one area that we get asked quite regularly about is like really good profiling tools, because achieving good performance is really, really critical. Achieving it like a high and stable frame rate. And I think the profiling tools available for VR platforms right now are a little bit lacking, and actually just generally in the browser they're not great either. If you're building like a native console title or something, you've got very advanced profiling tools that give you very accurate data, and we don't really have that in browsers, or like nothing that is easily accessible to developers. So I think the browser vendors probably need to do more work in that area, and there's probably an opportunity for third parties to build better tools.
That's great.
I think for VR specifically, it might be monetization options. Just like paying through the VR headset, for example, is very, very difficult. Other than that, lots of people want to build multi-user experiences just because of the social aspect of VR. So that is something people seem to be looking for a lot.
Yeah, it'll be really cool if we can get the Web Payments API working in WebXR.
In Oculus browser would be amazing.
That would be amazing, yeah. Stewart?
I mean, it'd be nice for. I know updates to WebKit are coming, but I think we all hit some pain points when developing things for iOS, which is a shame because I think we all enjoy that platform as well. I think iOS and Android are both fantastic. It would be nice to see, just in general, I'm not speaking about any specific feature, but just in general, to see a bigger embrace of the WebXR community within WebKit.
It did make me extremely excited when WebXR had appeared with in development next to it on the WebKit feature status. So Hopefully it's not gonna be too long, I hope. So WebXR can support augmented reality and virtual reality with a single build. For your platforms, do you focus on a single one of these areas, or do you encourage developers to build both AR and VR with the same experience?
Well, I mean, with Play Canvas, we don't. I mean, each developer has their own goals, and what we tend to find is that it's pretty rare that a developer wants to build an application that has both AR and VR support built into it. So instead, like, I typically tend to target one or the other, right? So yeah, but I mean, we view both as being important to. Sorry, door's closing. But both are important to in our roadmap, and actually, like, the speed at which the WebXR spec is evolving, it's actually like kind of difficult to keep up with the development, and it's crazy how quickly like new features are being developed. So for companies and teams that are building these platforms, like just keeping up with the new features being released is a significant challenge.
Yeah, I just had to redo my hand tracking shim yesterday due to changes in how hand tracking works in the hand tracking API. They were good changes, and I'm excited to see them. But yeah, there's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah, we're definitely in this phase at the moment, aren't we? Where there's a lot of kind of experimentation and iteration going on, and the people who are building these kind of frameworks and libraries and platforms, they're kind of they're part of that iterative loop, and it's a really important process to go through, because I think like it's heading in the right direction. I think a lot of really good decisions being made. So yeah, it's all part of the process.
Yeah, Stewart, you might want to plug the library you were talking about.
Oh, handy.js. You can look for it on GitHub. It's open source. It just makes defining and detecting hand poses, custom hand poses, really easy. It felt like a thing that should have been easy already, but I guess it's such early days that you just have to build it yourself.
Do you think that's something the platform itself should provide, like that higher level access to hand poses?
Yeah, that's a good question. And for a second there, I thought I had a firm answer for it, but I don't. In the same way that something like Three.js is apart from the browser itself, and that is a very hefty piece of machinery, right? And I'm talking about something that's actually really small and just sits on top of Three and on top of all of Oculus's hand tracking magic that it does. So yeah, maybe it's not appropriate for that to be in the browser just yet. But I was surprised that, I guess I was surprised that it didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
It just seems like as soon as you have hand tracking, you want to be able to recognize all sorts of things that you're doing. And if anyone wants to jump in, right now it detects poses, static poses of your hands, including the ASL signing alphabet for finger spelling.
Wow.
But what it doesn't do is gesture. It doesn't relate what your hand is doing to your body, and it doesn't relate different shapes over time or different poses over time. And I sort of have an idea about how I might do it, but I bet someone watching this has a better idea and would like to jump in and contribute. So that would be awesome. That would make me happy.
Very cool.
I have one last question before we jump to audience questions. I mean, if you don't get any audience questions, that's fine. I have lots of other questions. Yeah, one last thing I want to ask is, are there any particular projects that people have built with your frameworks that you really want to shine a light on and for people to check out and try out?
Yeah, I can. Let's see. Well, I think one of the Play Canvas developers who's really doing some exciting things right now is a company called Visionaries 777. And they are a digital agency that does a lot of work with e-commerce. So they build 3D configurators. and yeah, like product visualizations. So yeah, if you go to Visionary's 777 website, they've got like one of their applications is called Cyber City. And it's like it's kind of like a 80s retro style kind of neon city that you can drive around, and you can jump into like AR experiences. It's pretty cool. So that's probably what
Wow. I like that. That's cool.
So if you have a quest, definitely check out Archery Training by White Rabbit on Construct Arcade. Then if you want to watch Wonderland Engine WebXR development, twice a week, Source Code, Tim Ikoka streams development of basically a Stardew-inspired farming game. And finally, Yinky from Playco is doing a lot of interesting work of like multi-user experiences, even like cross AR and VR. So maybe find him on Twitter or something like that. Playco, really, really cool. And Ilya Pipo is laying a lot of groundwork currently for interaction and like just things that you'll need basically in every project. So definitely check out what he's doing there too.
Well, fantastic. Stewart?
Well, I was just thinking that a lot of the stuff that I've been facilitating over the past maybe 2 years is mostly internal projects for other companies. So there's been some interesting stuff that I've been involved in, but not things that I can really share or point to for those reasons.
I feel this. I often get my hands tied behind NDAs of seeing really cool things and then not being able to talk about it. Especially as an advocate, that's a really hard thing. Someone shows you something amazing and you're just like, I want to tell the world and I'm not allowed. Cool, so we have like 4 minutes left and I was hoping we'd have some audience questions maybe.
Indeed, yes. Thank you, Ada and Will and Jonathan and Stu. Thank you so much. We have Julie Smithson, and
Hi, everyone.
She is running our Slido, so I will pass it over to Julie.
Yeah, we've got some great questions coming in. So many of them. There's about 8 to 10 of them. But the first one I've got that came in said, how compatible is each one of your respective engines with the JS ecosystem at large? And can I assume seamless work with Node modules for RealSense integration, Google Cloud STT, Looking Glass? Over to you guys.
So we use JavaScript. We have a JavaScript API. You can use any library that runs in the browser there. We even have Node support coming up, so you can actually build with Node all your projects, and you can profit from the entire Node.js ecosystem there.
Cool, yeah. In terms of Play Canvas, it's a super flexible and open system. So you can either just use playcanvas.js, which is, I mean, it's like the equivalent of, say, Babylon.js and 3.js. It's just like the framework, just the runtime. And with that, you can use it as a module or an ES5 build. You can use it with TypeScript. It's got TypeScript definitions. But if you opt to use the editor, the online platform, then yeah, you can just drop any JS framework into the editor, say like jQuery or anything like that, and call its functions. So yeah, like we try to make it as open as flexible as possible. And in terms of like supporting all of these different devices, I mean, if they're supported by WebXR, then they're supported by Play Canvas.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about all of this working in JavaScript and in a browser context. I like to say that you know, if you're a web developer, you're already a WebXR developer. You just might not know it yet.
Right.
Great. We have some other questions, which I think you've kind of covered already as far as all-in-one workflows that you use. Somebody's asking about the barriers for entry for flat web developers to adopt 3D web into their existing content offerings.
Models.
Who would like to take that one?
Well, I guess I blurted it out. Generating 3D content or editing 3D content that you can already find elsewhere for free or for purchase. There's a lot of overhead there. That's a whole skill set that if you are purely a flat web developer, you probably don't have. You can start to ramp up on it especially with free tools like Blender or something like that, where you can really start to play around without having to you know, fork over your life savings. Sorry, I apologize for the motorcycle parade outside. Yeah, that's Well,
yeah, I mean, it's kind of like making a video game, right? Like, it's rarely just one individual making a video game. It's not that's impossible, because you do find individuals that have all of these different skills. But today, I mean, yeah, if you're going to build anything 3D, and especially anything 3D, delivered through AR and VR, you're going to need all of these skills covering art and design and likely developing with the whole web stack. And it's tough to find individuals who have all of those skills. And I think like what I'm noticing is that I'm seeing this kind of like new category of digital studio spring up that specializes in building this category of content. And you find like some of the bigger digital agencies go to some of these like smaller ones to kind of like engage them to fill the gaps in their skill sets.
In case you want to start just like really small and like integrate some 3D into your existing 2D content, you can just like grab some models from Sketchfab and like use Model Viewer or the Sketchfab viewer to display them. Maybe even A-Frame could be the next step, then going into 3GS, or maybe Wonderland Engine Play Canvas, something like that. But like you can probably start small and use Model Viewer, for example, for something really simple, non-interactive.
Yeah, it's a great way to learn. I think when it comes to kind of building something in production, though, it's quite unlikely you'll find exactly the artwork that you need on a site like Sketchfab, and it's then that you kind of need to find somebody who has the skills to kind of build something custom for you, and that can be tricky, as Stewart was saying.
I'm hoping we'll start to see a new cottage industry around 3D asset production. Just like we have, there's a large amount of Illustrator communities that will produce you 2D assets. I'm hoping we'll start to see a similar industry come up around 3D assets. I really hope.
Yeah, or even just like, like more accessible tooling for building 3D content, because at the moment, developers tend to fall back on 3D Studio Max, Maya, or Blender, and all of those applications are they're pretty hard to get to grips with, right? So like if people can build like web-based, accessible, easy to use, like 3D modeling applications that anybody can get into, I think that'd be great.
I think a lot of people are building, like especially if they're working in retail, like want to build stuff so they can view products. So I think accessible 3D scanners, say at like maker spaces and stuff like that, would really help a lot of people take their products, 3D scan it, and use something even basic like Model Viewer to display it on their website would be a good start for many people.
I also think that tools in VR will be really, really useful. If you can edit the model in VR with your hands, pushing and pulling on different nodes, and you have a little floating panel that you can carry with you to, do things like, I want to zoom in to sub-millimeter level and really, fix this detail or whatever. That is so much more intuitive than having to learn how to navigate a virtual 3D interface through the 2D screen with your mouse and keyboard. So I'd love to see more tools like that. I think that would help.
That's a true visionary moment. You've already, envisioned your dashboard, what it's going to be like in that immersive space. So that's great. That's great. I know Trevor's back, and I think we're about to flip over to the next panel. Thank you all so much for joining us today on this panel and contributing. We really appreciate all of your knowledge and sharing. There's so many questions that people have, and we're doing our best to answer everything for everybody. But thank you again from all of us for joining us at the Developer Summit today.
And thank you, Ada, for running the panel. Thank you so much.
That's all right.